Hi, welcome back to Linux and Unix administration. We're going to look at the lab today, and it's going to involve 3 machines. So we're going to be using, actually, it's only really going to involve 2 machines. So if you've got a spare Linux machine and a free BSD machine out there, feel free to join along. If you are in this lab, part of this lab particularly, then you can go over to the Vault and download the machines. So let me go over to vault.cybernatos.net here. And over there, we've got in disk images. Go over there, and if you go to OVA, you'll see System Foundations. And right-click that, and you can use Download. And download Save File. And that will take it'll take actually probably about 20 minutes, something like that. Depends on how many people are downloading that file right now. So give that some time. You can download that, and then I'll actually be trying to use that, and I'll power that up in just a minute. Okay, while we're waiting on the images to download, which should take somewhere around 20 minutes, it really depends on, well, I guess it depends on your internet connection speed, but how many people are downloading simultaneously. So it might take anywhere from 5 minutes, I would say, to 45 minutes if we get about 25 concurrent downloads. So there you go, right? There could be some time in there. But while we're waiting for that, we can actually go over and look at our machines. So we can go over to File, and this is inside of Oracle VM Virtualbox. So if you haven't installed that, please refer to one of the videos on how to install VirtualBox on your local PC. Just pop into my playlist there on Linux and Unix administration and look for VirtualBox installation, and you can see how to install that. Well, or you go to virtualbox.org and you can install it to your Mac, your Windows PC, or your Linux box from there. So once you get that, let's go ahead and go into Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager. We're going to go to File, and you see this got this Virtual Media Manager. That's just all of you. Those are your disks and your ISOs and stuff like that. Your Host Network Manager, okay, that's what we're looking at right there, because those are the networks we're going to have. And over here, we're going to create a network, and we're going to call it VBoxNet0. So if you just hit create, by default, it'll call itself VBoxNet0. So go ahead and do that. So hit create. You'll see this VBoxNet0 pop up, and you should see an IPv4 address of 192.168.56.1. Be sure you have that configure adapter manually. And you have the IPv4 network mask of 255.255.255.0. Now I'm going to stop right there, or we're going to choose close. Once you have that, then go back into it, File, Host Network Manager. Inside the Host Network Manager, click on VBoxNet0 Properties. When you click on the properties there, you'll see that DHCP server is disabled. And we can disable the DHCP server for right now. So we want that disabled for right now. In the future, we're going to set that up. But right now, we're going to leave that disabled. So that is it. Just be sure those settings are there, and that's the way it looks. And you'll be good to go. Now remember that manual adapter is at 192.168.56.1. That's going to be your host, actually. And then this IP network mask, that's just your network. So let's go ahead and close this out. Now with your machines, if you have a machine, which you can actually choose any machine you want, we can just grab a machine out of our list here. I can choose the Raspbian, or I can choose Android, or I can, well, whatever I've got here on mine, you can pick whichever ones you have on yours. And in this case, I'll just grab one of my web servers. And on my web server, I've got 2 network interfaces. So once we have the System Foundations images downloaded, then I can go over and I can actually specify what we got. Let me see how much longer I've got on that. Oh, looks like it's done. So I'll go ahead and import those, and I'll come back once I have those imported. That way I can use the exact same machine you're using. But for those of you who are looking at this right then, You can go to Settings. Inside of Settings, go to Network, and you're going to enable Adapter 2. That's all there is to it, just enable Adapter 2. Now I'm going to go over and import the our System Foundations image and get right back to you. Okay, welcome back. Now I've got my System Foundations set up. I'll drag this right over here really fast and we'll drop that off. I've got my System Foundations set up now as we have it in our classroom. So we got our FreeBSD 12.2 machine, our Linux Mint 20.1, and our Windows machine, our Windows 7 machine there running. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this Linux Mint machine, go into the settings, and I'm going to rename it. So I'm actually going to go through and rename this now. It's that Linux Mint 21. And I'm going to call this Linux Mint 21 Master, just like that. Click OK, let it get renamed, then go right back into it, go right back into those settings, and now go down to Network, click on Adapter 2, and enable Network Adapter, and you're going to choose Host Only Adapter. Now we have some options here. We have NAT, which is Network Address Attached Storage, the NAT Network, which allows us to be part of a network where the machines can be part of a network there. The bridged adapter, which shares your adapter, and that way you get an IP address that's on your network. The internal network, which I think, between host only and internal, I'm not really sure. I think the internal network allows you to only be on that machine itself. Then the host only adapter is the one that we're going to be using, and host only puts us on that separate network that allows our PC to see the virtual machine. I think internal network does not allow the virtual machine to see our PC. Yeah, so the host only adapter there. Host only is going to allow our PC to see the machine, and that machine to see our PC. Internal network only allows that machine to see itself. So it is just a dummy adapter and it can't go anywhere. So we're going to be using the host only adapter there on that second interface. Over here in promiscuous mode, we're going to choose allow all. That allows us to sniff connections and other things from our host machine. So choose OK. Now we've done that, we're going to go over here, right click and choose clone. On the clone, I'm going to go to expert mode and I'm going to choose linked clone. That name of clone right there, Linux 21 clone. That Linux Mint 20.1 clone, that's the name. Linked clone, and right over there, MAC address include only NAT, yada yada, and I'll say generate new MAC addresses for all adapters, and then I'll choose clone. Now, as normal, the cloning only takes a second, so that machine will come up in just a second. I'm going to rearrange my machines, and so now we've got the clone and the master. I'm going to power on both of those, so I'm going to click both of those and choose start. So choosing start there, my clone and my master image come right up. And we're going to let those come online. Okay, the machines are just about online, so we are almost there. And once those come online, we're going to go ahead and log in, and you'll notice that we have 2 network interfaces on each of these machines. All right, we've started up Linux Mint. It is running for the first time. If you downloaded the image that I gave you there, then you're getting this screen. On this screen, we'll go to First Steps, and we're going to choose the traditional desktop instead of the modern. So First Steps, and choose traditional instead of modern. It's going to take a second to reconfigure your desktop for those changes. After you make those changes, then we can close this window. You can uncheck the show this dialog right there. And click the little X and get rid of it there. So, hello. If this machine will respond. Okay. And now it's telling us connection failed, which is just fine. And we'll go over here and close this window. Now we've got both these machines up and running. I'm going to open up the terminal. on both of these machines. And you can see they're the same thing because they're a clone of each other. I'm going to go over here, do a sudo-s and type password right there to become root. On the same one, I'm going to do sudo-s and type password to become root. And let me get back to this message really fast. Now we're root on both of these machines. Now I'm going to go ahead and double click that, make that full screen, double click that there. And I'm going to type ifconfig on each machine. So ifconfig. When I type that, you see we've got this enp0s3 and enp0s8. And you'll see we have that interface on both machines. So that enp0s3 and enp0s8. Now you may actually have something different on your machine. That's one of the really big annoyances that we see coming out with a lot of the new Linux distros. But what's important here is that we've got this network interface, this 10.02.15. 10.02.15. This is not a NAT network, so these machines cannot see each other, but they can both get out to the internet. So if I went over here and type ping, and I did that, then you can see I can ping out to the internet. I'll do the same thing in the other one, just like that. There. So we can ping both of those. Everything's working really well, except we've got this other interface here. Now, now that we see this interface and we see the name, I'm going to say, let's simplify that name. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to need to update Vim. So we're going to do the apt get install Vim and -y on that. We need to do that on both. So apt get install Vim and put a -y on there. It'll go out the internet. It'll install VI improved for us. We want to use VI improved because VI has a couple of key conventions that are a little unusual. And I don't want us to spend time figuring out how to use an editor. I want us to actually use the editor. And if you've seen my video on Vim, there are only 3 things you got to know. That is the escape:\wq to save, escape:\q exclamation to get out of it without saving, and I for insert. That's all you have to know. So, okay, now we've done that. You can see that this is installed. We're going to go over here, and I'm going to try and make this a little bit bigger because this may actually be mouse type. Didn't think about that. And make that a little bigger like that, and make that a little bigger right there. I'm also going to change this. Let's go over to View, Edit, Preferences. And this is this is something I recommend. If you want to go through and do that, you can go through and change that. Custom font, yeah, that sounds good. We'll go over there. And colors, don't use those. Go over and use green on black. And do not use transparency right there. I'm going to use close on that. So edit, preferences. Be sure I've got a monospace font. And I'm going to use green on black. Green on black, no transparency. Make this a little easier to see. All right, now I'm going to type clear on both of those and get back to our screen. Now we've done that. We've made it all nice and clear, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to go ahead and do a VI Etsy. No. Let's do boot grub. No, let's do Etsy. Etsy grub, and then we're going to do, I think it is boot. I think I do want to do boot. We'll find out what I want to do in just a second. So VI Etsy default, that's it. Etsy default grub. I'm going to do this twice, so maybe you'll catch it on one of these machines. So VI Etsy default grub, press enter. Then I'm going to drop down here to that grub command line Linux, and I'm going to type I for insert, and I'm going to type net.if names equals 0. So you should see that right there, net.if names 0. If you missed it, I'm going to do it again right over here. So I'll go ahead and start this up. VI Etsy default grub. Inside of there, going down, and put an I for insert or A for append, and do a net.if names equals 0, just like that. Once you do that, hit escape :WQ, enter. Escape :WQ, not semicolon, but a full colon, WQ, enter, and then type update -grub. Update -grub right there. It'll run through and then type reboot after you do that. And I'm going to type reboot on both these machines. And we're going to bounce these machines. When they come back online, you'll notice that the interfaces are a lot easier to understand. They'll also be consistent throughout every machine you have cloned off this machine from this point forward. And it'll be consistent for all of your Linux infrastructure. So it's a rather neat change. Okay, after making that grub configuration change, and we did update grub so that everything was updated, we've brought the machines back online, and now we want to configure that network interface. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal. And inside the terminal here, I'm going to make this full screen. So double click, make it full screen. Type sudo-s to become root. So sudo is super user do, -s is shell. So you can do sudo-s and then type your password, which is password. And ta-da, we're root. Now su by itself is switch user. If you just type su dash switch user with nothing after it, it means switch user to ID 0. ID 0 is always root. So switch user to root will require a root password. Super user do does not require the root account to have a password. It just requires you to have a password. So let's look at ifconfig on both machines. So ifconfig. And then you'll see that we've still got, now we got the eth0, which is very clean, eth1, very nice. Then we have 10.0.2.15 and 10.0.2.15. Of course, this machine right here cannot ping this machine over here because it's the same IP address, 10.0.2.15. When you have it natted, both machines can go out to the internet, but they can't see each other. So that doesn't help. What we'd like to do is have them both natted, but also be able to see each other. And that's actually NAT network. But if we choose NAT network, then I can't show you the other network features. So there you go. So here we are. So let's choose ifconfig. We're going to type ifconfig eth0, and we're going to give it an IP address. This 192.168.1, or actually let's do 0.112 on the second machine. And I'm going to do 111 on the first machine. So ifconfig eth1 192.168.0.111/24. Now when I do that, and I type ifconfig again, now remember you type ifc and then hit tab, so you use tab completion. You'll see this one now has an IP address of 111, and this one has an IP address of 112. So the IP address on the eth1 interface is 112 on this one and 111 on the other one. So you can ping with 3 pings, 192.168.1.111, and it will ping right over here. Oops, not 1. Oops. 0.111. It'll ping 3 pings right over to that other machine. And same thing over here. We do a ping-c3, 192.168.0.112, and it will sit there and ping with 3 packets to the other machine. There you go. Now, this was all to get these machines up and running. There's one last thing we need to do, and that's install the virtual machine tools. In order to do that, you want to go Devices and choose Insert Guest Edition. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to close this. Type exit, then exit. We're going to make this as clean as we can. Of course, you can do this while you're running several things. But to make it nice and clean, I'm going to just do one machine here. So I'm going to pop this up like this. I'm going to go to Device. Now mine expanded because I just went to Devices and choose Install install guest edition CD image. It's going to pop up like this, and then you choose run. When you press run, type the password. It's going to ask you for the password, and then it'll bring up this black box. It'll go down, and it takes about 1 minute. After that minute, it says press enter to continue. You press enter. Once you do that, go back over. You can right click this and choose eject once it's done. And you'll notice that you can resize your machine any way you want to. So you can make the machine different sizes and different shapes. And I'll be using that quite a bit for this instruction so that you can see the whole machine. But yes, I did that. And that way we can see the whole machine. I'm going to go ahead and snap that up like that. And we're going to go to the next section. So go ahead and install that. And after you install the devices right there, go to install guest edition CD image. Once you get that installed and everything is up and running, which it does give you some errors as it goes through, you don't have to do a thing, just watch it. And then once you get that done, this machine will come up and we will have our canvas. And the idea is that so far you've been using Unix and Linux commands to configure your host, and you may not have even noticed that you've been doing Linux and Unix commands. Things like sudo-s and things like apt-get install vim or ifconfig eth1. So it should be becoming quite natural just at this very early age, that there's a very early usage of a Linux operating system, that wow, this is actually quite intuitive. It's something that's very easy to do. And we're going to try to keep that momentum throughout the entire course. We're going to try to keep this growing as in such a way that when you finish the course, you're going to know a couple of 100 commands, and you're going to be able to use those commands very effectively. And we'll say at the very least, you'll know 50 commands very effectively. And when you're able to manipulate a system with those 50 commands, you'll be able to do so without even thinking. I didn't have to study those commands. I just know it now. Okay, so here we are. Now that you've got this up and running, hopefully you've got that done. If you want to reboot, you can go ahead and reboot. But we're just going to go ahead and open a terminal. And inside this terminal, I'm going to make it a little bit larger so we can see. And I'm going to type a couple commands. One of them is, who am I? So when I type who am I, it shows me that I am student. Very straightforward. And then I can type, all right, W. W will show me who, and it will show me what's running, kind of how much of the CPU I'm using, what time I logged in, everything else, and what terminal I'm on. Okay, well, if I type who, then I see that student, what terminal I'm on, and what time. And then last, or who am I, and you'll see that right there, or last, and you'll see the students, the people who have logged in, how many times it's been rebooted. Notice that the W is the shortest command, but it gives us the most information. Who is a little bit longer, and it gives us more information. Who am I is a lot longer to type, and it gives us the least information. Then last shows us all the last people who logged into the machine. So W, who am I, and last. There you go. Now I want to know information about my ID. Originally I mentioned root was ID 0. I didn't mention anything about what our ID was. So I can type ID and I can press enter. When I do that, you can see that your user ID, this over here, is 1000. The group ID is also 1000. And you're in several subgroups. In Unix, you have a primary group, and then you have secondary groups. And the primary group, that's the one you see in files if we type ls space -lh. This is your user account, and that's the group. So when we type ID and we see this user ID is 1000 student, group ID is 1000 student, then this right here shows it student, and this is our primary group student. You will not see your secondary groups referenced on your file system. You won't see the secondary groups come up. Well, where is that located? So we just did this ls space -lh, which is list long human readable. So we just did that, and it listed all this information. Well, where does it get this information? I keep talking about, Unix is a bunch of text files. Well, let's look at one of those. We're going to type cat etc passwd. Now, passwd, I guess you can figure out, that means password, right? But when we type cat etc passwd, it gives us information like this. And we can see over here that we have a student user. Where's that? Home student bin bash right there. And you can see that 1000 or that 1000 right there for student, and the name student user with some more fields like address and other things. You can see what your home directory is. You can see what your shell is. And you can see this X, and that would be your password. Back in the old days, your password would be right here. Now your password's not there. So if you want to see your password, you would type a sudo cat etc shadow, enter, and then enter your password. And that shows you student, and there is your encrypted password right there. So let's recap. The way we're going to recap is we're going to type the word history. So history right there. Those are the commands that we've typed so far. One that's missing is the apt-get install vim. So we got the apt-get install -y vim. Want to be sure that's in there. Oops, sudo. Now, if you notice, when I type sudo this time, it did not prompt me for a password again. So where do we get our groups? We see where we get our usernames. Where do we get our groups? So let's do that. Cat etc group. There you go. There are your groups. And if you look, there's the group right there. And there's the ID. Group and ID, and group and ID. So now we can actually change permissions based on ID numbers instead of names. So we can actually type chown for change ownership, 1000, which would be student, colon, and you could give it 1000 for group student to whatever file you wanted. Now, there is no file.txt, and when I type this, it'll say there is no file.txt. But you can see this is how you would type change ownership using numbers instead of the names themselves. Now, this video has gotten up to about 28 minutes, and that means that we're about at the 30-minute mark. And a 30-minute video for me can drag out to be about an hour for somebody watching it. So I do not want my videos to be over 20 minutes as a general rule. So this one's gone a little bit long. Sorry about that. But this is it for today. Things that we've looked at, type history. You can see the stuff that's in our history. You just go through and look at that. If you want to copy it, you can copy that stuff off. And you can save that wherever you want to save it. And that's our history so far. I hope that this has been helpful, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you next week. If not, we'll be right here on YouTube, and you can correspond with me via Telegram.